What's up, y'all? About to go live on Twitch for a new Gallant Says podcast exclusively. What's up? New Gallant Says podcast is about to drop exclusively live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says with my new haircut. Question, even though I look not bad today, do I have an image problem? Twitch.tv/Gallant Says with my new haircut. Question, even though I look not bad today, do I have an image problem? Sup, New Gallant Says podcast is about to drop exclusively live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says with my new haircut. Question, even though I look not bad today, do I have an image problem? Sup, New Gallant Says podcast is about to drop exclusively live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says with my new haircut. Question, even though I look not bad today, do I have an image problem? Sup, New Gallant Says podcast is about to drop exclusively live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says with my new haircut. Question, even though I look not bad today, do I have an image problem? Sup, New Gallant Says podcast is about to drop exclusively live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says with my new haircut. Question, even though I look not bad today, do I have an image problem? Sup, New Gallant Says podcast is about to drop exclusively live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says with my new haircut. Question, even though I look not bad today, do I have an image problem? Sup, New Gallant Says podcast is about to drop exclusively live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says with my new haircut. About to go live.
A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to say.
You got grow, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast, available live on twitch.tv/Gallant Says. Maybe you can catch it on YouTube yourself, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Or if you're listening to this
on Thursday morning, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud. We got a lot of stuff to discuss on tonight's show on this, what is it? Wednesday, September 14th of 2022. Reflect the Sun asks, what is wrong with him? I'm assuming talking about Nathaniel Hackett. We'll get to that in a moment. I saw a therapist today. I've been seeing a therapist regularly. I highly advise anyone to see a therapist. It helps you out, sort through your thoughts, help you become a better person. It's a gradual process for all of us, right? Well, I'm wondering, especially in the wake of the way that I watched the Seattle Seahawks and Denver Broncos game a couple of nights ago. If you didn't know, on Tuesday, after seeing Russell Wilson in his mint green suit come into Lumen Field, and then on top of coming into Lumen Field, do all of the very insufferable Russell Wilson things that we have seen in the past, I thought to myself, if the Seahawks somehow, some way, win this game against the Denver Broncos, just to spite Russ, I am going to wear a tuxedo to work myself with sunglasses. And guess what? They fucking won. How they did it, I still do not know. I will take it. The Denver Broncos really tried to give the Seahawks that game, not just with multiple fumbles in the red area, but also with that 64-yard field goal attempt at the end of the game. And I sat back and thought to myself, damn, Paul, some people might like this from you, how you are very petty, how you hold a grudge, how you are especially willing to talk shit to specific fan bases that you don't like, even if it might make you come off as somewhat irrational along the way. Is that good? Is that something that people actually want? And seriously, I don't know. I have realized, though, that this has been a large part of me as a sports broadcaster, sports personality, whatever the fuck you want to call it, over pretty much the last decade, which is my entire career in the industry. Whether it's thinking the Indianapolis Colts are soft when I first started, going all the way to now because a couple of Titans fans talk shit to me. I hate that fan base and hope all the bad things in the world happen to that franchise. Or maybe it's still holding on to the idea that I was right about James Harden when he was here with the Houston Rockets. I'm back in Houston now, by the way. Or with Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks over the last couple of years being as insufferable as he was, maybe I need to let it go. I need to move on. I once had a meeting with bosses at a certain radio station, and they said, Paul, you're not funny. You sometimes try hard to be funny. I was hurt when they first said that, but I also realized when they said that, they're wrong in this sense. I know that when I go on an unhinged rant about something that I don't like, that some people find it funny. Other people probably think that I'm a crazy person that's lost his mind. Should I be trying to get back to some sort of balance? Seriously, I want to know this from you. And you can answer this twitch.tv/Gallant Says, @Gallant Says on Twitter, all the socials, whatever, you name it. I actually want to know this. Do you want like thoughtful, smart sports talk? Or do you want the ramblings of a crazy person? Because I think I'm somewhere in between both of those worlds. Ecthelion for 200. I'm going to get it right eventually, man. I have a hard time reading it. Preach, brother, you were actually entertaining, and I obviously love listening to you. I love the brown nose. Not going to lie. But at the same time, I'm trying to appeal to a broad audience, right? We want this thing to grow. We want this thing to be a wonderful show. We also don't want someone like myself to just continuously do the same shit over and over again. And that's sort of what I found myself thinking in that meeting with my therapist. Damn, Paul, you just talk shit about a lot of people. Have you ever been positive? There's this clip that I remember when I was doing my show back at Sports Radio 610, where this one guy called in and he goes, "You're negative about this thing, you're negative about that thing. Come on, dude." And he went on for like 30 seconds, and it was a great rant. But not a lot has changed since then. I tend to think that being skeptical to the point of cynicism is a healthy approach for anyone that's in this industry, seeing as we are fed a lot of bullshit. But maybe I do need to be a little bit more positive when it comes to certain things. I'm curious. I like the responses. Reflect the Sun says no ramblings, let loose. Okay, fine. I appreciate it. I do want to know, though, because we will walk it back. I'm officially turning the page with Russell Wilson. You know, those 2 years, and in particular the last season I was there in Seattle, that last year was annoying. There were so many stories that were coming out from Mark Rodgers, whether it was from Mark Rodgers himself through Colin Cowherd. And I was like, okay, dude, you don't want to be here. Just say you don't want to be here. Just leave. And the way that he did it just drove me to a point where, even though I know that Russell Wilson isn't a bad guy per se, I know that also he is someone who is aloof to himself and kind of an iconoclast, ooh, big words, to the team concept of football, which I do believe is a team game. Speaking of teams, let's talk about Russell Wilson's new team. What a transition, Paul Gallant. And we're going to bring those back too. The old Horatio Kane transition that we had back at 610. How about Nathaniel Hackett? Now look, Nathaniel Hackett is a first-time head coach. And I do think that you have to be fair to somebody who is new on the job. But the end of that game on Monday night, he made an absolutely crazy decision to kick a 64-yard field goal at the end, especially considering the history of that end zone for those who have followed the Seahawks, especially considering the fact that I don't think a field goal longer than 57 yards has been made in Lumen Field / CenturyLink Field history. But you also just signed Russell Wilson to a gargantuan contract in the offseason. Maybe you should use that guy, seeing as he is probably going to determine your future. And it's not exactly like you have the full backing of the new ownership group of the Denver Broncos. You were hired before those folks from Walmart and other places finalized the sale. Anyway, let's go back in time. Here is Nathaniel Hackett at his press conference after the loss that the Broncos had to the Seahawks, where he actually rationalizes the decision that he made to kick a field goal.
No, sir. No. He knew where we had to get. I thought Javonte made an amazing. Why I was expecting to have to go for it on that down and distance because I believe we were about 3rd and 14, 3rd and 15. I thought Javonte made an incredible play and put us in the field goal range, the mark that we were looking for.
You heard him right there. The mark that we were looking for. Do you buy that? I mean, I know it was a 3rd and long situation, but when you find yourself in 4th and manageable with the way that the Seahawks are moving the football, at the very least, one, you should have rushed your field goal team out there to kick the field goal as quickly as possible, seeing as you had all 3 of your timeouts there. That's situational awareness that's learned over time if you are a head coach. Nathaniel Hackett's a first-time head coach, doesn't have a whole lot of guys on his staff with veteran expertise. That makes sense. What they did not. And I think part of that is on Russell Wilson, who is a guy that we have noticed in Seattle has drawn a lot of delays of games over the course of his career. I used to think it was Pete Carroll. Now I'm starting to think that maybe this was a Russell Wilson thing, letting the play clock dwindle and getting called for delay of games. I lost my mind on it once. I think it was after a Rams game because it just happened every fucking game, it felt like. Delay of game, delay of game, delay of game. Well, maybe Russell Wilson needs to take a little bit more ownership in this partnership he's talking about and call a timeout there or get his ass off the field so that the field goal unit can come on. Instead, he stood out there kind of like absent-mindedly while 30 seconds ran off the clock until they eventually called a timeout at the very end. It gave the Broncos essentially only one way to win the game. They had to hit that field goal. Anyway, we'll get to some of your comments. I appreciate them. Twitch.tv/Gallant says, I don't know why I made this exclusively to Twitch as long as I did. You can also watch it at youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Here is Nathaniel Hackett yesterday. And this is not a good look for Nathaniel Hackett.
Not great. 24-hour rule. 24-hour rule.
Waste time jumping into the fire there.
Yeah.
You know, with coaching, second guessing and everything. I think the big one that it comes down to, Coach, is 4th and 5 with Russell Wilson or 64 yards with Brandon McManus.
Yeah, looking back at it, we definitely should have gone for it. Just not, one of those things you look back at it and you say, of course we should go for it. We missed the field goal. But in that situation, we had a plan. We had a plan. We knew that the 46 was the mark. We were 3rd and 15, I think, 3rd and 13. I'm more upset about that play before it to lose yards, to be able to, getting that there would have definitely been better to be able to call that same play and get extra yards. But he dumps it out to Javonte. Javonte makes a move, goes a lot farther than I think we had anticipated. We were expecting to go for it on 4th down.
All right, blah, 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 blah. Look, I am all for people owning their mistakes, admitting when they've made them, especially in football where these guys are such hard asses and are going to say in press conferences generally, we did what was in the best interest of the team. But come on. This is not the place to second guess yourself. Your first Monday, technically Tuesday press conference after a game. Even if he's right in saying, yeah, we probably should have gone for it there instead of kicking a 64-yard field goal despite Brandon McManus having the leg. You can't essentially, after your first day on the job, question your performance publicly the day after. You can't if you want to keep your job long term. Imagine my first day in Seattle or my first day in Houston. At the end of the show, I say, I don't think I had the right leading topic. I don't think I had the right takes on anything. In fact, everything I did over the last 3 hours was bullshit. Imagine if I said that after my first show. Would you have confidence in me lasting long term? And you're a listener in this situation. What if you're the boss? You're feeling even fucking worse. And again, the Broncos ownership did not hire Nathaniel Hackett. They did not. Now, we've heard Russell Wilson publicly endorse Nathaniel Hackett, but he essentially gave a quote with, I believe in Brandon McManus. I believe in Nathaniel Hackett. I believe in everything he said at the very end of it. Good God. You can't do this stuff, second guessing yourself publicly, unless you have a track record, a resume. Someone like Lovie Smith, who I'm covering in Houston, he could get away with second guessing himself. By the way, he didn't. He should have, I thought, second guessed punting against an Indianapolis Colts team that certainly will not play as poorly as they did Sunday, the next time that they play the Texans. This is probably your only chance to actually beat the Colts. He also probably should have second-guessed this decision that he had to not kick a field goal, instead to punt from the Colts' 36-yard line, given that they have a kicker in Kaimi Fairbairn, who's hit a 61-yard field goal over the course of his career, who's 18 of 28 over the course of his career from 50-plus. I don't know. That's just me. But Lovie Smith has been in the league for a while. This is Nathaniel Hackett's first go-round. And whether you're a Broncos fan, you're probably feeling, what the fuck is this guy doing? Owner, thinking to yourself, Jesus, what's his buyout in case things hit the fan? Or you're a player. Forget Russell Wilson for a second. Would you feel confident if this guy is second-guessing himself immediately after the first game where he's making big-time decisions? And look, he could grow on the job. He could theoretically get better. Let's not write Nathaniel Hackett's post-career script right now. But most people across the league are probably going to say to you, this guy is dead last among coaches in the NFL. Dead last. Is that fair? Probably not. But that's what happens, and especially when you kind of compound it like this. Now, if Hackett was going to admit he made a mistake, this is something you do privately and you keep it in-house. I think you tell your players about it, and guess what? They will respect you for it. They might question you a little bit, but when you're doing this publicly, the whole world is seeing it, and guess what, Nathaniel Hackett? You haven't done enough to earn any benefit of the doubt. Everyone is going to question you from here on out. Now, let's see what we else here. Twitch.tv/ Gallant Says, or on YouTube, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Fun stuff. Thoughts on Brock and Salk getting the band back together? How is Danny doing? I actually did text Danny during the game. I'm sure he got a million texts watching that Seahawks-Broncos game. I do hope he's doing well. We haven't talked nearly as recently as I would like. Thoughts on Brock and Salk getting the band back together? I mean, it is what it is, you know? It does make me sort of feel like the 2 years I was there never even happened. They're just going back to what was there before, but whatever. No hard feelings. I actually have moved on. I wish them the best. Moore is a good friend. She's on that show, and I hope that everyone at that station does well. I love Stacy. I love Bump. You know, I love Dave Wyman too, Bob, like Mike Lefko, who I was in college with, like no hard feelings. But at this point too, like, not my problem. If I think about it, the more and more I do, the more and more I will be like, fuck it. You know, I do miss Seattle. And I'm not going to lie, I did miss Seattle on Monday night watching that game. You guys are a special fan base. What else do we have here? Yeah, okay, we can transition into something. Now, look, this is going to come across as political because we are going to talk about politicians. I don't want you to believe that I am leaning any particular way when I bring up these political things, okay? I just want to ask a question because we're talking about image, right? Okay, so we're going to be fair and balanced here as best as we can. But I do want to talk a little politics on it. For those who don't know, sorry in advance, but when I was in Seattle, did a little conservative talk radio. Ironic, no, given that I was the guy who was once on Tucker Carlson having shit put into my mouth by one Tucker Carlson. Remember that? Anyone? Look up Paul Gallant, Chill Dog. Just look it up. It's funny. Did change my perspective on things. So, for anyone who's read from a teleprompter or a speech, it's not always that easy. But when you fuck up while reading off of a teleprompter, you generally look like an idiot. Well, here is California Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi trying to read a speech, and oh no, it didn't go so well.
Mr. President, thank you for unifying and inspiring a vision of a stronger, fairer, safer future for all, for our children. Your extraordinary leadership has made this glorious day possible. That's an applause line.
That's an applause line. Now, if you're listening to this podcast right now, she holds her hands up. I don't know. I think she's trying to get the most out of the crowd out there. But does that make you feel good? Like, hey, you're supposed to applaud there? No, it doesn't. It just makes me think, okay, this is a person who is a forward-facing individual, and this is who is elected and seems to be consistently in a position of power for perhaps a little bit longer than she should, right? People get up there in age. People get to a point where maybe they're not quite throwing 100 miles per hour. We all see it with their parents, I'm assuming, right? I'm assuming most people are around my age. I'm 33 years old. Maybe some of you are younger. Maybe some of you are older. But, you know, forcing applause when things are not great in this country, it's not a good look. I'll show you another example of imagery perhaps gone wrong. Because, like, a leader like that doesn't make you feel good about your future. But let's be fair and balanced. And I will present to you perhaps the most cringe advertisement that I've ever seen from someone that I actually think that I like as a leader. Anyway, let's shift into this one. Now, if you're watching this on twitch.tv, you can see it. This is Top Gov.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your governor speaking.
Today's training evolution, dogfighting, taking on the corporate media.
The rules of engagement are as follows. Number 1, don't fire unless fired upon, but when they fire, you fire back with overwhelming force.
Does it say that in the bill? I'm asking you to tell me what's in the bill.
Number 2.
Okay, so this is essentially playing off of the Top Gun movie that just came out. Here's Ron DeSantis, and he's walking around, and he's wearing a flight suit. And if you go back a little bit and you zoom in, you can see that he is wearing a tracksuit with a "Don't Tread on Me" little badge that's right there. Anyway, this advertisement, after he shows a video of him coming back at some reporter asking him a question, the fake news, I'm sure. Just DeSantis is going to keep going forward in his political ad. Keep watching.
Number 2, never ever back down from a fight.
All right, let's pause a second and rewind. Top Gov, Jesus Christ. This is Ron DeSantis, by the way, who might be running for president in the near future. At the very least, he is the governor of Florida, who I do think has handled things pretty well during the pandemic. I know that's crazy to say. I say that because you could do what you wanted and there weren't a lot of restrictions, and let's not go down that rabbit hole, right? But Jesus Christ, I mean, he's got the leather jacket. Can we relax? Can we relax a little bit? Let's continue the video.
Back down from a fight.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech or ask a question?
Damn, he got her.
Number 3, don't accept their narrative.
It's wrong. It's a fake narrative. I just disabused you of the narrative, and you don't care about the facts.
Okay, so if someone's interrupting you or asking you a tough question at a press conference, just say, hey, you're talking, you don't know what you're talking about. Hey, you stop right there like that. Okay, does that make you feel good? Image
Why
problem.
people don't trust people like you, because you peddle false narratives.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's jump.
Okay, hang on, pause. There's a child flying this plane. There's a child flying this plane. Continue. Oh, he's using his kid. Good job. Good job. There you go. Okay, so that is the Ron DeSantis Top Gov video. Here we go. We're getting a little political here. Reflect the sun. Crazy to say, yes, lots of dead COVID people. Lots of dead COVID people everywhere, you know. There's a certain point where, after all the restrictions were put in place up in Seattle, where I sort of lost my mind as someone who is in pretty good shape. And I realize, as you continue to comment, Reflect the Sun, freedom to kill other citizens with autoimmune or cancer or something like that. Like, I get what you're talking about there, but there is a certain point where, like, should the people that are healthy in the country shut down everything they're doing just because there are some people out there who might die if they come into contact with you? It's a tough decision, and it's not one that I would ever want to make as a politician. That's why I never will ever be a politician. Maybe I'll cover politics in the future or something like that. But if you take a look at some of the numbers, and I would say in particular some of the people that have been hospitalized for COVID, I mean, a lot of them, and I want to say it's 70% or so, it's been something related to, being obese. And there was a point where I got very frustrated with that side of it. Now, again, we're getting further and further away from it, and I'm not necessarily here to endorse Ron DeSantis or Nancy Pelosi. All I want to say is these are two people that are up there in age that think that, one, telling people to applaud is going to make them look good, too, that putting together a political advertisement where they're dressed up in a fucking leather jacket and are trying their best to be Tom Cruise and Top Gun, these people think this looks good. And it just has me depressed about, well, the way that things are going in Congress. The average age of the 117th Congress, 59, a median age of 60. And did you know that members of Congress are actually getting older? The biggest age groups that saw growth in Congress over the course of the past year: people 80 plus, people 50 to 59. You know who saw the most losses in Congress? People aged 30 to 39. And there was only one person in Congress in their 20s. Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina. I'm not even sure that that person is still in their 20s, because the list that I looked was from 2 years ago. I am older than just two people in Congress. And, you know, we get talked about constantly in the radio game about trying to appeal to specific age groups. You want to hit that critical 25 to 54 demographic. And yet, if you take a look at the Senate, 70% of senators are older than 60. It's really weird how this is all set up. And you understand, too, seeing the imagery that these folks are putting out. Like, they're completely delusional and out of touch. Hey, applaud here. Hey, I'm the top gov. Either or. These are your leaders. A tad depressing. Some would argue that the leaders in football coverage right now is Pro Football Focus. Transitioning right back into sports. I saw something the other day, and it frustrated me. It was a post by Sam Monson, an Irish person who talks about the NFL on Pro Football Focus. I'm not being racist against the Irish guys. I'm not, okay? Listen. I'm Irish American. I, too, had takes that aren't necessarily politically correct about the passing of the Queen. Anyway, how the hell did Pro Football Focus come up with this one? We're talking about the highest graded quarterbacks from week 1 before Monday's game was played. Per Jarrod Evans, PFF Jarrod. What's up with the spellings of names these days? Oh, wow. I sound old there. I sound like DeSantis and Pelosi. Josh Allen, 91.5. Okay, that makes sense. Josh Allen was awesome. Kirk Cousins, 85.1. A little more skeptical of that one. Ryan Tannehill, 81.1. What? Justin Herbert, 79.8. Jameis Winston, 79.6. Lamar Jackson, 76.8. Jalen Hurts, 76.8. Jalen Hurts ran most of the game. He had 13 carries. Patrick Mahomes is 8th at 71.5. But what jumped out to me was 10th. Davis Mills was 10th among quarterbacks in the NFL in week 1. Give me a fucking break. Now, he had a nice stretch in the third quarter, but I don't believe that for a second that Davis Mills was one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL this past week with all the balls he was throwing high, out of bounds, across the sidelines, and with the way that he looked in the fourth quarter and in overtime after he took that blindside sack and fumbled. No, I don't buy that for 1 second. It led to a back and forth. But before we get to the back and forth, you might be wondering what the hell is Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Focus is a website that I think is a useful tool to analyzing football, but at the same time, I think it takes itself far too seriously. It is a website with 51 to 200 employees that claim to work with 32 NFL teams and 80 football bowl division clients. Who does the grading? Pro Football Focus, per the website, employs over 600 full or part-time analysts, but less than 10% of analysts are trained to the level that they can grade plays. Only the top 2 to 3% of analysts are on the team of senior analysts in charge of finalizing each grade after review. Our graders have been training for months and sometimes years in order to learn, understand, and show mastery of our process that includes our 300-page training manual and video playbook. We have analysts from all walks of life, including former players, coaches, and scouts. We don't care if you played. Okay, I mean, that seems like you're covering all your bases when you talk about it like that. And there's tons of people online that feel like they can analyze film. You see it nonstop. It's kind of gotten insufferable. Not everybody knows what they're fucking talking about when it comes to this stuff. But okay, they were trained, whatever. And only 10% are trained to the level that they can actually grade plays. Do we know that the top 10% of those 600 people are definitively good at analyzing those plays? We have no way to check their track record. We don't. Really just going off of trust here. And I think one of the big questions that you have with these guys is, wait a second, how can you grade a play when you don't know what's being called in the huddle and what's being called from the sideline? How can you do that? Makes no sense. Well, there's actually another section on Pro Football Focus that explains that. You don't know the play call. We are certainly not in the huddle, but we are grading what a player attempts to do on a given play. Pause. Well, how do you know what they're attempting to do on a given play? Well, football is extremely nuanced regarding the preparation and adjustments that go into each play call. Once the ball is snapped, most players are clear in what they're trying to accomplish on each play, and we evaluate accordingly, except for when they fuck the assignment up. And when one player fucks up an assignment, how many other players does it fuck it up for? Continue. Of course, there are always some gray areas in football. There's a lot of gray areas. It's not just some. And this is why I have doubts about Pro Football Focus, especially when we're talking about specific graders that are supposedly watching hours and hours of film grading each player on each play. Just think about how hard logistically that would be. Even if you're the best grader alive, are you going to, a couple of days after a week 1 game, be able to grade every single play in a given game? And are other people that are grading going to grade the same way as you when it is based off of a judgment call? What happens when two guys are grading the same game and they have an entirely different interpretation of what should have happened on a play? Because guess what? They're not being told what happens in the fucking huddle. Very frustrating to me that this is something now that has become like the Bible for folks like Bill Barnwell. I'm not convinced Bill Barnwell watches that much football. By the way, who has the ability in this industry, even when it is your job, to watch 16 games a week and give honest analysis of every single player out there? It's easier to do it than in baseball, than in basketball, but goddamn, it is not easy. So that leads me to a take not about Davis Mills, held by one Matt Vanderame, a national NFL reporter at Fansided. Apologies, Matt, if I butchered your name. Matt tweeted this: if Mahomes isn't number one after that showing, throw the algorithm in the garbage and start over. Okay, I think that's an extreme take. And by the way, that is how you generally pander to one audience. All it takes is a couple of Kansas City people to retweet that, and guess what? Everyone's going to be saying, yeah! Josh Allen was the best quarterback in week 1. Can we all agree on that? I mean, one of his interceptions came off of a drop. The second one, you could argue the receiver didn't run the route the way that he was supposed to. Josh Allen looked fucking unstoppable, and he did it against the Los Angeles Rams defense that was in the Super Bowl last year. Are the Rams still the same team? I don't know. But throw the algorithm in the garbage. Mahomes isn't number one. Mahomes played great. Mahomes had a good game. But Mahomes was 8th, and that's what's fucking crazy. He was 8th. So anyway, let's go back to an exchange, because Sam Monson decided to defend it. He decided to double down, saying it's not an algorithm. Someone responded saying, well, we know it's not based off film either. And Monson decided to defend this. Look, he works at the website. I get it. Mahomes was great, but he wasn't as good as the box score suggests he was. Every play is factored in, not just the highlight reel. He threw the ball to a defender and needed his receiver to break up the INT. But that's one play. And as Matt points out, he attempted 39 passes. One was interception worthy. Then Monson continued to double down. Look, the big issue is Davis Mills is 10th. How the fuck is he 10th? Patrick Mahomes is 8th. How the fuck is he just 8th? Like, that's why sometimes when these fucking people online, and I think that there's a lot of them in Seattle. I did not meet many people like this in Houston, and maybe it's because it's not that passionate of a football town these days, given how shitty the Texans have been. But sometimes the eye test is just easy, simple, and right fucking in front of you. And when you see that thing put together, that's a load of bullshit. How can you argue that Patrick Mahomes is number 8 after what you saw this past week? 2, 3, 4, I'll take all of those. 8 behind Jalen Hurts, behind Ryan Tannehill, behind Jameis Winston. Like those 3 in particular. And you can take a look at the numbers and compare them. And I know it's not all box scores, but Jesus, Patrick Mahomes crushed those guys. Patrick Mahomes looked amazing in his first game without Tyreek Hill. Sometimes it's just simple to accept what your eyes are telling you. And it's funny. All of a sudden, these days, the eye test, you're being told that, like, it doesn't actually support an argument that you make, especially online. This is why I got off Twitter. Like, I got to argue with somebody who says that someone's Pro Football Focus grade is X, Y, or Z when I actually watch it. I watched Davis Mills play. I have a hard time believing that he is a top 10 quarterback in the league based off of just 1 week's performance. And obviously this can change as the year goes along. But that was the 10th best performance in the league this past week. Bullshit. Reflect the Sun asks, where is Geno? This came out before that game was played. I would imagine Geno is, Geno would be number 3 on that list. But here's the thing. Did Geno's second half make you feel like he belongs in the top 3? He had a great game, no doubt about it. Second half, though, should he be ahead of Patrick Mahomes? That's all I'm asking. I'm enjoying this comment section, by the way. Anyway, one last thing before I hit the road. I talked earlier about how there's a lot of old Congress people out there these days. Yeah, but if you really want to feel old, learning that your co-host and producer on your radio show, Vanessa Richardson and Sean Mapes, both of whom I love, learning that they had no idea what an N64 today made me want to jump out of the building. 4th story. Would I have died? No, I think I would have just broken my legs because it's like a 4th floor, drops to the 2nd floor, which is where the parking lot is. It wouldn't have been pleasant, but the thought crossed my mind. I'm 33 and I'm explaining what an N64 is. Like, fuck me, right? We've all played the N64 at one point or another. I at least think, but to have to explain the N64 to both Sean Mapes and Vanessa Richardson just made me feel unbelievably old. I mean, shit. And then I explained to them in 1996 the craze about getting an N64 at any toy store, like a Toys R Us, which I don't think they knew what that was either. How there were people fucking fighting each other about getting an N64 or a Tickle Me Elmo. And they were like, whoa, wow. Okay, Grandpa, let's take you to bed. It's one of the most depressing moments of my adult life, realizing, oh shit, like you're explaining things that happened to them when Vanessa was 1 year old and when Sean was not even alive. So I'm curious in the comments section what you this week experienced that made you feel old. I liked GoldenEye, the video game, and again, it's going to be remastered for some of the new generation consoles, but there's a caveat here. I did not enjoy it as much as some other people did. And it's not to say, like, I didn't love it. My memory of GoldenEye has been completely supplanted by my memory of playing Halo as a kid. Halo first came out, I want to say, when I was 11, 12 years old or something like that. Halo, the graphics, the controls, the multiplayer itself, the blood. Halo made me forget GoldenEye. Halo's the best shooter game ever to play with a bunch of buddies in the same room on the split screen. It'll never be topped because obviously we went to online gaming not too long afterwards, and Halo 2 is my favorite game ever. But Halo's the number one. It's a shame for GoldenEye because GoldenEye was very revolutionary with some of the controls, but it's kind of clunky now, and I know they tried to remaster it a couple of years ago, and the graphics, like, they just didn't really hold up that much. But there are two other games that I really enjoyed playing with other friends, and you have to play it in person with friends. Mario Kart, still can play that game. Mario Kart might be the most timeless game ever, and I know that there's other versions of Mario Kart, but Mario Kart on the N64, if you see that at a friend's house, don't you want to play it? And I still have my N64 from when I first got it. And in 1999, it still works. It still operates. And I still have Mario Kart. And I still have 4 controllers. And if anybody comes over here and is drunk, we going to play Mario Kart. And the last one is Super Smash Brothers, the original one. Wonderful game to play with friends. Fond memories I had. But it wasn't fun to remember that I'm 33 years old and that people don't know what an N64 is. Good God. Anyway, very much appreciate y'all for tuning into this edition of the Gallant Says podcast. We are trying to do this every single weeknight. Tomorrow, we will probably do it at the end of Thursday night football between the Chiefs and Chargers. Will Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes actually make it into the top 5 of Sam Monson and Pro Football Focus bogus rankings? We'll see. We'll have to wait to find out. If you haven't subscribed already, you can watch this on Twitch, twitch.tv/GallantSays, or on YouTube, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. You can also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts if you're more of a listener. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, too. Leave a review, a rating, tell a friend. I appreciate all of the support. This was fun tonight. Great conversations. Shout out to Reflect the Sun, to Ian Lindblom, All-Pro Seahawks, Thelion 42,000. No, wait, shit, I can't read the numbers. 4,200, whatever. I almost read it right. So long, farewell, have yourselves a wonderful Thursday.